In this video, I'm going to go over some controls in the toolbox that you're going to need to be familiar with in order for you to complete some of the later projects. They're easy to use and self-explanatory, but never hurts to have somebody walk you through it. So what I've done here is I've just created a blank form project, and UI control demo. I'll change the text property of that form right there, and I don't know, just to make this thing look good, let me throw a menu strip on there, and I'll bring up the toolbox and I'll type menu strip, and I'll drag that on there, and I'll put in my file, E ampersand XIT, there we go, and you can see that turns the X into a keyboard shortcut. All right, so I'm just putting that there so it looks good. Let me put like help ampersand about. All right, so now we've got, and I've just put that on there for spacing. Now, one of the controls that I use a lot is the tab control. So I'm going to go to the toolbox here, and I'm going to type in tab, and you'll see there's one called a tab control. And let me put that on my form and scale it up. And okay, so you can see right now, like, where did the movement thing go? How do I reposition this? And it's a little bit, it's not entirely obvious, but there's kind of an invisible box around the entire extent of this control. So if I click here, kind of in a blank area next to the tab, now you can see that kind of bounding box around the entire control. So like now I can't move the control, but if I click on that blank area next to the tabs at the top, now I've kind of clicked in that bounding box, and now I can resize this thing. And all right, so there's my tab control. Now, how do I control what tabs are actually on this? That is in the tab pages collection property of this control. So if I go down here to the tab pages property and click on the ellipsis, now I can control, or I can add and remove and reorder the tabs that are on this control. So maybe I have a tab called like customers or something, and then maybe I have one called this gets a little bit annoying because now it's like I really wanted the properties on tab 2, but I can't really do that, so I have to keep going back to the tab pages. Basically the properties for the entire control, accounts, and maybe I've got one for vendors. So let me go back to that, and I'll add another tab here. So I'll add one called, vendors. Oops, vendor. Oh God, can't type. Okay, and then click OK. And so now you see I've got 3 tabs on there. Now let's say I wanted to reorder them. I can go back to the properties for that control, and I can change the order that they're in. And you don't actually see them get reordered until you click OK, and then you'll see them get reordered. Now, you can drag and drop different controls on this tab control, and it allows you to pack a lot more controls or a lot more user interface into the same space. And then one other thing, this is nice. When you go into a control, you could want to set its anchor property. That controls how it's going to scale with the parent form. So if I run this right now, you'll see that that I can resize the form, but the controls on it aren't going to stretch, right? So you can see that the tab control is not changing size with the size of the parent. But I can change that with the anchor property. So if I go here into the anchor property and I say I just want to say keep your distance from the right edge of the control to the right edge of the parent, and keep the same distance from the bottom edge of the control to the bottom of the parent. Now I've anchored that thing to the entire form. Oh, whoops, and I can't do that while I'm debugging. So let's go back and try that again. Anchor, click, click. All right, and now let me run that. Oh, Lord, where's my brain today? Try that again. Anchor. Click. There we go. Now if I run this, you'll see see how the tab control is now scaling with the parent form, and that looks a lot nicer. So there's our tab control, and we can drag and drop controls on each one of these tab pages independently, and it allows us to put more to organize our interface and get more controls into the same amount of screen real estate. So let's look at another control that I use a lot, and that is the combo box. So I'm going to open up the toolbox here, and I'm going to select a combo box and drop that onto the form. And this is really a drop-down menu that you can pre-populate, or you can sort of populate, at startup time, or you can change at runtime. So I've just dragged a combo box onto the customer's form here, and I'm just playing around. I'm not really trying to build anything that makes any sense. I'm just sort of demoing how these controls work. If you want to pre-populate the combo box with options, you can come down here to the items property of that control, and again you get the ellipsis, and you can open that up, and now you can put in the options that you want. So maybe we want to sort people by first name, last name, ID number, or outstanding balance. Click OK, and let's run this, and let's see what we get. There's build errors. Oh, wonderful. All right, well, it turned out that had nothing to do with the combo box. So so I'll run this project here. And now you see when we start up our program, you can see that control is only visible on that form where we dropped it. And if I select from the drop down, I can pick a different option. Now, to handle the user selecting a different option on the menu, you can double click on the combo box, and you will get a selected, indexed, changed event. And what you can do is you can check the selected indexed property of the control. So we know we're in combo box 1 here, and let me just put in a breakpoint. So what I'll do here is I'll just bring an integer variable, and we can just to allow us to see what index has been selected. There's the selected indexed selected index property. So I'll put a breakpoint on the line at the end line of that event handler, and let's run this thing now. And if I change the item that's selected, you'll see it triggers the selected index changed event, and we can see what index we actually selected. Now let's look at some other properties in the combo box here. Let's see if we can find the selected item property. Selected item. So there's the text of the option that was selected, and that's the index that was selected. So those are both very, very useful. Now let's take a look at let's go look at how we would have populated that at runtime. So let me go into the collections for the combo box here, and I'm just going to delete all this stuff out. Click OK, and so now if I run this, see there's nothing in that combo box. So let me go to the code for this project here, and in my constructor, after the initialize component, I can add whatever I want. So until initialize component is where the controls actually get instantiated. So you don't want to do anything with controls before that, and then any time after that is fair game. So let's go put some stuff into the combo box combo box 1, and what we do is we can add stuff to the items. Items is an array, or I guess it is a there you go. It's actually something called an object collection. There we go. And it has an add function, so we could say, we can add stuff manually here. First name, last name, ID number, and outstanding balance. And now when I run that, you'll see that those things are all there. Right. Now what if I just wanted to get everything? What if I wanted to clear the options that were there? Let's try this combo box one.items.clear. And, we have clear and count, so we can figure out how many things are there, and we can remove anything that is there. So now if we run this, we should see nothing, right? Because we're going to add all our menu options and then remove them. Why would you want to remove them all? Well, because maybe the menu is context sensitive, right? Something else changes, so now you want to change the other options for that control. The options changing one control changes kind of the context or the mode of the program, and now you want to change what a particular combo box is showing. So that's kind of program specific. So there we go. So that you can either pre-populate the combo boxes items collection, or you can do it on the fly. Okay, here's another cool trick with combo boxes. Let's get rid of all our statements here. What if I wanted to populate this combo box dynamically, sort of like at runtime, without having to use the items collection? Is there another way to do this? And there is. The combo box has a data source property, and you can set that to a list of things, and those things will then become the items that the user can select. So just to set some background here, I have created a class called student. Let me hit F12 to go to the definition for that. So the student, this is just a kind of dummy object to play with. So here's my class, and it has 4 public properties. These have to be public properties if you want this to work. It is not enough to have them be public variables. So a student has a first name, last name, ID number, and an outstanding balance. And then up at the top of my program, I have instantiated a new list of students, and I have populated that list with new student objects. And yes, that is legal. You can do that in C#, which is kind of nice. You don't have to add them one at a time. You can just kind of do that all in one go. So all I'm doing here is just populating the list with some dummy data. All right, so now let's see if I wanted to populate that drop down with the last names of the students. How could I do that? Well, let's set the combo box one's data source to, and then let's write a link query here. So I'll say like from S in students, and I guess the people seem to break the query up into several lines, even though you don't technically have to. Select s.l name for last name. Okay, and then can I do an order by? Nuts. There it is. The order by does not go at the end. It goes in the middle. Going at the end is SQL syntax. Let's say order by. Can I order by last name? Does that work? Okay, so now what this will do is it will select the last names from my list, and it will assign it to the data source. Now there's a problem here. If I actually run this, it will throw an exception. This thing needs a list or an array. So, and this returns some collection that implements the IEnumerable interface, and that's not good enough. So actually, let's just run it and watch it crash. There it is, unhit complex data binding. Okay, so it needs something that implements a list. It needs something that implements iList. So how do we convert this whole thing to a list? Well, it's really easy. Let's just put parentheses around it and say .to list. There we go. We'll convert that IEnumerable object, whatever it is, to a list. And now let's run this. And you can see there's our last names, even in sorted order. Neat. So that is a little bit slicker than, we could have also done something like this. Now, hopefully you'll see that link query is just a little more elegant than doing something like trying to write a list sort. I could do something like this. List of string names equals okay, and then students dot, let's see, students dot sort, right? And then I could pass in a predicate function to do that. All right, well, you know what? Actually, I'd have to write, I was thinking about find, but for sort, I would have to write a class that implemented iComparer, and I don't really feel like having to do that. But you could see that I could write a class that implements iComparer, and then I would get a list of sorted strings, and then I'd do a for each loop, and I would add each element into the items collection of the combo box, and you can see that this is just a whole lot nicer. So this is an example of LINQ is. It's a little tough to get used to because it's not your normal programming, C-based syntax. This is an SQL syntax, and then even then it's kind of a mangled or a reordered SQL syntax. But once you can understand how to use it, it really streamlines your code. So that is one way to populate the items collection of that combo box. So let's look at another control that I use a lot. This is a neat one. It is the data grid. So let's pull up the toolbox, and there's our data grid view. There we go. So there's our data grid view, and let me throw that on there. So there's our data grid view, and if we run this, nothing will happen, right? There's our data grid view. Now, how do we put some data in that data grid view? Well, let's go to the code. The data grid view has a data source as well. So let's assign that our list. Combo box one, the data grid view one dot data source equals, and then let's just assign it the students list and just see what happens. Does this work? It should, right? Because this implements iList for sure. Oh, cool. All right, so why did this work? Well, notice fname, lname, and these things these are the public properties of that control, and then these are the fields or the actual values for those properties. So you can see that we've got a very easy, elegant way to view our data. Now, what you're seeing here is actually a reference to the original data. So if I went in here and I started changing stuff, it would actually change in the actual collection underneath it, which is pretty cool because they are now actually bound together. Now, just to expand upon this a little bit, let me go add a button on here that'll sort these things. Maybe I'll sort them by last name or something, or I guess I could have done that using my combo box. Sort by last name. And let me double click on that to create an event handler. So in here, let me write a LINQ query that'll sort the data and then put it back in that data grid view. So let me make a list here called, I'll call it a list of students, list of type student, and I'll call it sorted equals. And then let me go grab that query from up here. So that sorts them in order, right? And what am I doing? Equals, oh, all right, dot. Oh, I see what's going on. So what I have here is a list of students, and what I'm selecting here is a list of strings. So I don't want to select S's last name. I just want to select S. I want to select all of the students. There we go. And then let's assign that to the data grid view. Data grid view one dot data source equals sorted. All right, now let's see if this actually works, and there's a chance that it won't, and I know how to fix it if it doesn't. So let's run this, and Now, if I sort these things by last name, are we actually going to see this stuff change? And you can see that we've run our query here, and we're going to change the data source property. And let's keep running here. Oh, and it actually did sort. Okay, so I have seen that if you, well, I have seen that sometimes if you sort the data that's already being displayed in the data source, it will not refresh. And if that happens, then you have to set the data source to null and then reassign it. It's not a big deal. So I guess what happened was when we reassigned this property, it refreshed. But if we had assigned the list, if we had assigned a list to our data source and then sorted the list, the data source would not reflect that change. We would have to set the data source to null and then reassign it to get that change to show up in the control. And even calling the refresh control on the data grid view will not fix that problem. So if you sort the collection that is being displayed, the data grid view will not automatically refresh that. However, because we're reassigning the data source property, I guess that does actually refresh what we see. So that's it. That's what I wanted to cover in this video. I just wanted to cover the tab control because that's really useful. I wanted to cover combo boxes and the items property. List boxes work the same way. They have an items property. But I don't really use list boxes that much. Data grids, I use a fair amount. They have a data source property, and all you have to do is just set that equal to a list or an array or anything that implements iList, and it will magically show up in the grid. And the only caveat there is that the class that you're displaying has to have public properties, that they can't be public. It's the properties that show up. So you can see that there's some sort of introspection going on here where the data grid can ask an object, what public properties do you expose? And they can say, okay, those are going to become my column headers. So there it is. This is just a quick little tutorial will hopefully get you up and running for some of the future projects. And then also I just find these controls to be particularly useful, and I use them all the time.